Hi folks, welcome to YouTube again. Kevin and Ellie here from Fight Designer LLC. Got some updates on this shell-ejecting Tec-9. So the shells that it came with, as I showed in the previous video, are bright orange, not ideal for prop use. So I've been playing with 3D printing some options. And I've done these in a handful of different colors with a couple of different ideas in mind. And it's also been a chance for me to experiment with some new techniques while I had a little bit of extra time at home. Had a couple of holiday days, what with the winter break. I'll be back at work tomorrow, but you know, I had some extra time at home, and even when I'm on a remote day at home, it means that I'm at least around so that I can babysit the 3D printer and check it when it starts to have some issues, which it does periodically. So I've been playing around with different versions of these 3D printed rounds. The original ones, the file that I found, the rounds were not quite pointy enough, so it was the first batch kind of hand filing and sanding them to get them to work. But then I realized, you know, this is probably not the most efficient way to do it. Maybe this is a great excuse to try my hand at Blender, which is the free 3D modeling software that is sort of a lot of folks' first entry into that, and can export as STL files, which is what my 3D printer uses. So I figured I'd give that a shot. So there we go. I mean, I'm sure this is not the most elegant way of doing it. There's probably some sort of a virtual lathe I could be using to get it to be exactly symmetrical and round, but instead what I just did was kind of took a slice, rotated a bit, took a slice, rotated a bit. So it's really the virtual equivalent of what I'd be doing in real life with my file or sandpaper as I tried to make that work. But it means that I can now just 3D print a batch of these at once instead of having to go through and individually file them. So before I show you the test, I did a couple of different versions. Some of these I did basically in full brass, similar to what you'd expect from these rounds. And the reason is when you see them in the magazine, you can kind of tell. I mean, it's this clear sort of frosted magazine. You can see when it's a full round. I did some in a sort of a lead color, whatever. Here's some that I did in a silver filament. You can tell when it's a full round and when it's not. Now, the issue with these shell ejecting props is what they load is the same as what they eject. So when you've got a frosted mag, what you want to see it loading is something that looks like a full round of ammunition, so that as it feeds those, you see what looks like a full round of ammunition going in, but when it comes out, what you want to see it ejecting, ideally, would be a shell casing, which is just the, and this is the cool thing about these 3D files, just this part. And so the 3D print files that I found, it's actually threaded, so you get a separate part for the projectile, and the original file had a full metal jacket and hollow point and a nice frangible kind of ammo option as well. Now, none of them as coming out of the original source file actually fed into the prop here, so I did have to make some adjustments. But the shell casings actually works just fine. I tried some adjustments on that before I figured out exactly what it was that was causing issues with the feed. So I tried a couple different kinds here. Full brass, well, it's, I think, brass filament, gold filament, something like that. So it would look right coming through the magazine, or silver. Two-tone, because I could, because why not? But I also tried some of these with a black bullet on a brass or silver casing. The idea being that when we see it coming out, this might look more like a shell casing as it's ejecting. Because what we want to see on the ejection part of it would be just a casing, because the bullet, the projectile, would have gone down the muzzle and gone already. So I leave it to you. See if you can tell the difference. Frankly, I doubt it. Unless you put it in slow motion, it's going to be really hard to tell the difference coming out there. Beep. Double feed. It's going to be really hard to tell the difference unless you're in a high frame rate, which I would probably not recommend for these props. So most of these I tested just like that, just hand cycling, but I wanted to see if they actually work for what this prop is designed to do, which is full auto electric blowback with cycling. So let's see that test. As you can see, mostly successful with some caveats. So let's take a look at the ones that failed, shall we? So the ones that didn't work, these are the ones that failed. And I was just doing that in my laundry hamper, so I didn't have to chase the rounds down. So all of these that failed, one of the things that happened was the bullet part broke off. And often this is a failure to feed, where as it came in at an angle, this snapped off. Or occasionally it would load, and then when it would eject that part, and this part would stay stuck in the chamber. And so that was a bit of an issue. Obviously, as a gun wrangler on set, that's a time when you'd have to stop and fix things. In terms of the design, maybe a little bit of better infill. I think I'm at like 30% infill right now. Might make that part a little sturdier. I don't know, and you can kind of tell there's a little bit of a hollow space there. That could maybe be filled in a little bit better, but not sure. There was one of these that it was one of the ones that I hand filed that didn't load right. That's probably just user error. Didn't quite file it off quite right. A couple of these also, I had the rim break off. So as it went in, the ejector hooked the rim, but it snapped off a piece of that rim as it tried to eject it. So that one, you can tell it broke off about half the rim trying to eject. This one, it broke off the entire rim. This probably is where, one of these came from. So it's probably something like that. And then it just ripped that part off. Let's see. This one seems fine. Just the bullet that broke off, but the rim seems okay. This one we've got you can actually kind of see where the rim started to break. So that ejector caught part of it and lifted it off, and it just snapped. This one, the whole rim snapped off, that lip. So a couple of issues, all of them were down to the structural integrity of this printed part. And some of these, if I can figure out how to remove the threaded barrel from the end, I could probably reuse this casing still. I just need to have a way to get that out without messing up the whole thing. Let's see this one too. Here's another one. Bullet broke off, rim is fine. So some of those I can probably reuse. And this is the one that just didn't load right because it wasn't shaped right. Some of them are just going to be trash, but that's, par for the course. And that one broke. And I have all these little bullet bits. I could try to epoxy these back on. With the projects I've been doing, there's been a lot of plastic epoxy as a part of that, so that's not such a big deal, but, we'll see. I also did minimal finishing of these, so especially with these that were the blender sliced version. These are really just like rough out of the printer. So it's relatively smoothish, but the layers cut this way, not this way. And so the way it's got to actually go in is this way and out that way. So there's a decent chance that if I could smooth this out or just sand it off or something, that might improve the reliability of the cycling. There's been some talk that I've never been able to make work of exposing these to sort of a chemical gaseous bath to smooth off the outside edges of it. I've had some luck with some of these things of strengthening them and giving it a little bit of a smoother outside by just basically soaking it in super glue, painting the outside in super glue. That fills in all the little gaps and makes it a little bit stronger. I've done a clear epoxy coat on some of my prop things to make them a little bit stronger and flexible, although that might have little bits that chip off and then it would jam things up and stick in them. I'm not sure. So, you know, even just a quick pass with some sandpaper, it's labor intensive, which is why one of those files, there's always a little bit of a seam where they print. And so, yeah, there's definitely some work I could do to kind of smooth these off if I wanted them to be able to cycle better and to just keep the whole thing lubed with some silicone oil as well, of course. But overall, as a proof of concept, I think we have achieved basically victory. I think we've shown that this can work. It can cycle. It can be relatively reliable. And hopefully, as I go through and weed out on the first round what doesn't work and what does, what's left will be rounds that are relatively consistently reliable, or as they break, you know, you retire them and get more. Because it doesn't take much to print these out. These are fairly cheap. And I can continue to refine the file. I might make that shaved down blender version of the bullet file a little bit pointier still. That might make it ramp out a little bit better. I have tried to polish the feed ramp a little bit. That might continue to be something that I look into to make that cycle better. But it does seem to be... Battery's dying. I need to charge the battery. But it does seem to be a decent option. So there we go. Our shell-ejecting Hanke Tec-9, which I got from M416 Gel Blaster, but as far as I can tell, last checked, they don't have it anymore. So it may have been discontinued right after I ordered it. And I did ask them, it does sound like the extra shell casings for their Sterling submachine gun are the same basic type, and those are available in gold, and those should work. So for anybody who doesn't have access to a 3D printer and doesn't want to go through this process, that might be a viable option if you're able to get a hold of one of these. But I'm not sure if you can anymore. They might be out of stock. So there we go. Kevin Inoue, Fight Designer LLC, and PewTube. And hey, have fun, keep playing. Stay safe, stay sane, stay healthy, look good, and I'll see you next time.